Hey, I'm Brian Miller, magician and motivational speaker. To my regular subscribers, thanks so much for sticking with me, and if you're new here, welcome to the channel. It's Friday, and that means it's time for a Q&A. I really appreciate your patience and understanding while I've been on the first leg of a major tour the past few weeks. I am back in Connecticut now. You know that if you follow my vlog. I did like 11 shows in, I don't know, 8 or 9 states for 3 weeks, and it was awesome. Now that I'm back home, I have a little bit more time to be doing my kind of more scripted, more regular content, like my Q&As and some camera gear reviews and tutorials and discussions about magic theory and performance theory. Over the next few weeks, expect to see a lot more of that and less vlogging while I'm home, and then I'll get back on the road and get back to vlogs and So if you don't follow my vlog, then you don't know what this Q&A is going to be about, and so let me give you a quick refresher. The last vlog that I did was at Ramapo College in New Jersey, and we were doing 2 shows that night. That's not very common on a college campus to do 2 shows in one night, but the thinking behind it was that they were showing a movie on campus at the same time as my first show. In fact, I think they were showing Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which is of course a popular choice. And so they were worried that there would be students who might want to see the movie and also come to the magic show. So they wanted to offer a second time later after the movie for the students who wanted to see the movie and then come over to the show. And I gotta say, it was a great idea in theory. The first show, we were set up for 200 and we had 200 students. Absolutely packed out, the room full. It was amazing. The energetic, enthusiastic, raucous crowd had an incredible show. We obviously expected less students to show up at the later show, but we had no idea how many fewer would actually show up. And an hour later, after I reset the show and we were all ready to go for the next one, only 25 students showed up. Which means we had 25 students in the exact same room that we had just done a show for 200. It was set up the same. I was set to do the same show. So when you put 25 people in a room set up for 200 and you're supposed to do a show, there are a host of concerns that you have to handle as a performer, as an entertainer. Magicians, comedians, variety acts, things that we have to deal with in that situation. That if you're not a performer, or if you're a new performer or just getting into the field, you may not be aware of at all. So first and foremost, it bears noting that audiences have different personalities, that not 2 audiences are alike. Ever. In fact, it's worth noting that if we had had 200 students show up to the second show, there's no guarantee it would have gone as well or had the same feel or tone. Different audiences have personalities just like different people have personalities. That may sound strange if you're not an entertainer or performer or anything like that, but the truth is that a group of people, a large group of people, when they come together, they develop a personality of their own, no different than an individual person has a different personality than the person next to them, and so on and so forth. So you might hear entertainers describe audiences like they're describing people. Like we could say, boy, the audience tonight was cranky, or the audience tonight was energetic, or the audience tonight was frisky, right? There's a lot of different ways that you can describe the personality of a large group of people when they come together. So they have traits and characteristics that vary from audience to audience, and they're susceptible to a lot of factors like the time of day. So for example, a show at 11 in the morning in the same venue as a show at 11 o'clock that night, 2 different audiences, same venue, same demographic, might have a completely different feel or personality or characteristics because, an early show versus a late show, a different time of day makes you feel a different way, just like you and I do as individuals. The venue itself can have a huge impact, what the venue looks like and smells like, the weather that day. We all know that dreary days get a lot of us down. We could come into a show on a dreary day with less energy, less motivation to be excited. The news that day. Sometimes performers aren't aware of local news. When we come into town, we don't know what's been going on locally. Maybe there was something horrific in the news that afternoon and people are still processing that, and that's affected their mood and their kind of mental space. So First and foremost, different audiences have different personalities, characteristics, traits that are susceptible to a large variety of factors. The first thing that's really worth considering here is that when a large group of people form a crowd, you tend to feel like part of a group rather than an individual. Imagine that you're at a rock concert and there's 10,000 people. You're at a rock concert, your favorite band, there's 10,000 people. You might be screaming and yelling and chanting and kind of going silly and going wild because you don't feel like anybody's watching you specifically. Nobody else in the audience, no one else in the crowd is looking at you specifically. They're part of the group just like you are. The band looks out into the audience, the singer looks out. Even if you think they made eye contact with you, and you know that it's really just a coincidence because they're scanning a sea of 10,000 people. So you don't get self-conscious when you think they look at you because you know they're not really looking at you. They're just addressing a crowd. Well, the opposite happens when you have a small group of people in a large place. Imagine you're at that concert that seats 10,000, but there's only 50 of you. And the nearest person to you is 3 rows ahead and 1 section over. And on this side, they're 2 rows back and 3 sections over. And there's nobody in your section. Well, in that situation, same venue, same band, same enthusiasm that you have for the band, you're probably less likely to scream and yell and go crazy and be silly and go wild. Why? Well, because anything you do or say, anybody else can look over and realize it was you specifically, you as an individual that was saying or doing that thing. When the singer looks out at the audience, you know that he can see you specifically. He can see you individually because there's only a handful of you there in a big room and you're all spread out. So when you feel like an individual versus feeling like a larger part of a group, you change the way that you act, which significantly affects the way that the performer does the show. And that's what you may not realize as an audience, is that how you act and how you react to the performer necessarily affects how the performer does the show. So the first thing that I do when there's a small audience in a big venue is I adjust my energy level. It would have been lunacy for me to walk up on stage in that second show where there's only 25 students scattered across 200 seats and do the exact same high energy show I did an hour ago with 200 students in 200 seats. It wouldn't have felt right. It would have felt ridiculous. Go back to the rock band, 10,000 screaming fans. Singer comes out and goes, "Are you guys ready to rock?" That's exciting. Everybody cheers and screams and yells. Imagine now that he came out, same singer comes out, there's only 50 of you scattered among 10,000 seats. Singer comes out and yells, "Are you guys ready to rock?" It would look ridiculous. You'd be like, who is he talking to? In fact, you would think as an audience, even if you like this band, you would think, wow, they are not in touch with reality, right? They're not paying attention. They're not here. They're not in the moment. They're just on autopilot. That's how you would feel. You would feel like they're not specifically doing a show for you. They're just doing a show on autopilot. And if I had walked up on stage at that second show and just done the same high energy show I did an hour ago, it would have looked ridiculous because people in there would be like, who does he think is here? What? The first thing I do is adjust the energy level of my show. For the second show, I adopted a much more conversational tone. Instead of doing a theatrical show like I usually do, like I did an hour earlier, where it's, there's scripts that are really built up and have moments and big gestures. I didn't do that the second show. I got much more conversational. Before the show, I really got to basically meet everybody, shake everybody's hand, get their names. So by the time I got up there, they all felt like they knew me and we were all just kind of hanging out. It's a very different energy level. Same material. For the most part, same script, same jokes, but different way of delivering it. A calmer, more conversational delivery I find works in that situation much, much better. It's also worth noting at this point that it's not actually the size of the audience. It's the density of the audience. And if you don't really know what I mean by that, let me explain. Don't click off, don't click off. What I mean is that 30 people in a room that only seats 30 will feel like a huge, amazing crowd. right? If you stick 30 people in a room that only sits 30 at capacity and you do a show in that room, it's gonna feel huge. But if you stick those same 30 people in a room that sits 500 or 1,000, it's going to feel empty and echoey. And so it's not the amount of people, it's not the number itself. It's the number of people in relation to how big the room is and what it can hold and what it's set up for. Because I have had high energy shows to only 15 people. When I was in a living room at somebody's private house, people were still crammed in kind of shoulder to shoulder. I've had high energy shows there, whereas I've had 100 people but in a room that was set up for 1,000 that were low energy shows, because even 100 people in a room set up for 1,000 feels like a small crowd. People feel like individuals and not like a big part of a group in that situation. Okay, so the second thing that's really worth noting about shows where you have a small group of people in a large room is that things don't take as long. What I mean by this is people don't laugh as hard or clap as long when they feel like individuals. Big group of people where everybody feels like part of a group, laughter tends to roll, right? So half the crowd starts laughing, then the rest of it starts laughing, and you hear that laughter kind of catch on and cascade back through the audience. You know, people, if only 25% of the room starts clapping for something, you can probably bet that within seconds the entire audience is clapping. That tends that wave of energy tends to roll through a large group. But when there's a small amount of people in a large room, you feel like an individual, like we already talked about. When you feel like an individual, you don't tend to jump on that bandwagon. There's 25 students in the second show. If 10 of them start laughing, it doesn't mean the other 15 are automatically going to start laughing. You're not going to get that kind of catch. Having said that, when you have a room that's packed with 200, that only fits 200, that feels like Woodstock, even if only half the room is laughing, that laughter will catch on even with often the introverts who would not otherwise be laughing out loud because they don't feel like individuals. They can get swept up as part of the group. This is becoming a really long video. I may have to split this into a few parts. This should be like a mini documentary or something now. In the situation where you have a small amount of people in a large room, people will not laugh as loud. They will not clap as long. And because of that, you'll find that there's 10 to 15 seconds that are shaved off of every single moment that in your show normally gets a laugh or gets applause. There's maybe 5 to 15 seconds that are shaved off. Doesn't sound like a lot, but over the course of an hour show, that could work out to 5 full minutes of time that is normally filled by laughter and applause that wasn't. So let's say you've been contracted by the venue or the booker to do a 60-minute show. That's your contract. So I show up, there's only 25 students in a room that sits 200. Well, I've been booked for an hour. I still have to fill an hour. I can't just do my show, it comes out to 55 minutes and go, well, there just wasn't a lot of people, and then point them to this video explaining what happened. I still have to fulfill the hour. So as a performer, there's the business side of it where you need to be aware of your contract. And what that means is there's 2 options, and I do them both, actually. One option is to plan extra material. So if you're a comedian, you might have one extra story in your back pocket. If you're a magician, you might have an entire extra routine that's sitting with you on stage, ready to go at all times, just in case you run into an environment like this. So that's one option, plan an extra routine or an extra story to fill up the extra time that you're going to need should you be in that situation. Now, the other option, which I also do, is slow down. Instead of doing as the fast, high energy show that you would normally do, if that's the kind of performer you are. Like for me, I'm a high energy performer. So for me, one of the easiest things I can do is slow down. I can talk slower, I can be more conversational, I can get people's names and ask them about themselves, and we can all make it a very kind of personable experience. By slowing down, you end up compensating for the time that you've lost by people not laughing as hard or clapping as long. Well, anyway, I think I've talked enough about this right now. I hope that you got something out of this, that it was interesting or enjoyable for you, whether you're a performer just getting started, maybe never considered this, or if you're not a performer and just kind of curious about what goes on and in those brains of those comedians and magicians and jugglers and actors and people that you see out there. If you enjoyed this video and you're interested in more of what I've got, if you're not following the vlogs, check out the vlogs. They're a lot of fun, behind the scenes, on the road, on tour. If there's anything you'd like to know from me or you'd like to see on this channel as we move forward, let me know, hit me up. I want to make this channel, this community, something that all of us benefit from, and in different ways. So anyway, my name is Brian Miller. Thanks so much, and always remember that our world is a shared experience. Have a great day.